Welcome ladies and gents, my name is Curci and this is the review for Destiny. Before this game was released, I said that it was overhyped. I predicted the game would be overall good, that it would sell well, and that it would develop a solid fanbase. However, I also predicted that there would be some things about the game which would prevent it from being the revolutionary game people expected it to be. I wasn't entirely wrong. In fact, the game is arguably worse. Destiny had all the potential in the world to be a great game, but instead, for every positive of Destiny, there is a negative. The game is developed by Bungie, the creators of the Halo franchise, who are certainly no strangers to the FPS scene. In fact, the first-person shooting mechanic is really the best thing about Destiny. FPS fans will feel right at home with the natural controls and pretty good navigation tools like jetpacking that adds a slight degree of verticality to the game. Shooting is the heart of Destiny's mechanics, and while it is a strong point, there isn't much more that Destiny has, and so we encounter our first problem. Destiny can be really repetitive at times. You'll be revisiting the same locations over and over and fighting the same enemies over and over. You could argue that there are tons of things to do in Destiny, like story missions, strike missions, patrol missions, bounties, competitive, and public events. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't having fun at times while playing Destiny, which is even greater when you play with friends. But all those options all boil down to you're just shooting more enemies. The competitive gameplay is your traditional FPS multiplayer experience. Story missions and strike missions are actually pretty similar, except that strike missions all end with an intense boss battle. Bounties are simply challenges like getting a number of headshots or not dying during a mission. A patrol mission is really one objective that can be completed within a minute or two, and public events are randomly generated single objective occurrences with a time limit attached. So basically, there isn't much variation in the things that you do while playing the game. I did like all the different types of enemies in Destiny. Each different race has their own unique behaviors which forces you to play not so mindless. It also helps that the enemy AI is actually competent. When their shields are down, they will hide for cover until they recharge. They'll flank you or pin you down. It was nice to play a game where the AI wasn't being dumb. At the end of most missions, you'll have to fight a boss, but these fights are basically shooting tons of bullets at the enemy and hope that it will eventually die. While you could implement a strategy to maximize the damage done to your foe, all bosses are the same story. They have a massive amount of health and deal massive amounts of damage, and lesser enemies can spawn in which can ruin your day or just be a source of ammo when you're running low. The big problem with these encounters isn't the long fights, but the punishing respawns. If you or your fire team is killed, you have to start all over again, and with these fights sometimes lasting 15 to 20 minutes, having to restart is not a fun time, and sometimes will have people leaving out of frustration. Not to mention that the reward may or may not even be worth it. Speaking of rewards, I felt that these really weren't well designed at all. You could do extremely well in a mission or a competitive match but get nothing, while someone who did horrible gets a great reward. It just makes you realize that the loot game, one of the big selling points of Destiny, is entirely random and not skill based at all. Not to mention the engrams that you can redeem for gear. These can sometimes suggest you will get a high level piece of armor or weapon, but after redeeming it there is a chance that it will downgrade to a weaker level piece of equipment. It is extremely frustrating. One of the big hopes for me when it came to Destiny was the game's story. If the game had a great story, I would forgive a lot of things that the game does wrong, and maybe even call it the best game this year. However, it doesn't have a good story. With the awesome setup, Destiny is clear to be dripping with lore, but none of it gets fleshed out with the game's story. In fact, during the cutscenes that Destiny will not allow me to skip, the characters on more than one occasion alluded to telling me more about the story, but decided against it. It is almost as if Destiny didn't want to tell its own story, like it was inconvenienced by the fact that it had to tell a story at all. Even the game's lackluster voiceover work failed to have me at all engaged in what was going on. The voice acting was so bland that even the actor for your ghost companion, Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage, one of the big selling points of Destiny, who also provides most of the voiceover work for the game, sounded like he'd rather be doing something else. Destiny's environments are beautiful and the soundtrack is the best this year. The MMO elements are also really well done with a good leveling system for each of the 3 classes and even a leveling system for gear and weapons. All these carry over into the competitive side, which is one of my favorite things to do in the game. The gameplay is very Halo-like, which isn't at all that surprising. The fact that skills and equipment carry over into competitive is cool until you get dominated from other players with superior skills and equipment. Even though you can still kill these other players if you attack them from behind or the side while their attention is elsewhere, a head-on attack will probably end with them winning. It gets annoying after a while, but an easy solution is to go back into the PvE side and grind out better levels and gear. This makes the game feel more like a chore than having fun as you replay the same missions that you've been playing, and this also gets even more frustrating once you realize all the loot is completely random. With competitive being where I want to be and the game forcing me to do something I don't want to do just so I can have fun doing with what I do want to do, I end up just turning the game off. With Destiny, I had trouble picking the game up rather than having trouble putting it down. It has no idea what it wants to be and ends up just being a game that lacks its own identity as it takes inspiration from other games rather than creating something unique for itself. To wrap up, I'll say that Destiny is a well-made game. It's pretty and you can have fun with it. When it comes to gameplay, Destiny does things very well and its shooting aspect can be considered one of the best. But it has a large amount of negatives. It's punishing and not very rewarding boss battles, its repetitiveness, lackluster voice acting, lack of a real depth to story, and a horribly designed loot game. Destiny just sucks the fun out of itself. Some people can overlook the game's missteps, and if you can, then you will find a game worth playing. Destiny is without a doubt the most overhyped game in a year filled with overhyped games. I did have fun with the game at times, but when all that fun is broken up by so many frustrating things, that does not translate into a good game. Destiny had all the potential in the world to be great, but it failed. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.